July 30th, 1944. Normandy, France, 4:37 a.m. The fog hung low over the fields like a wet blanket. The air was heavy with the wetness of morning, and every blade of grass shimmered with dew. In a shallow ditch beside an American artillery gun, a 19-year-old soldier named Raymond Quincy Cade held the firing rope of a 105mm cannon. His knuckles were white, his heartbeat pounded louder than the distant engine sounds in the dark. Ray had never fired real bullets in combat before. He had been in France for just over 2 weeks. Back home in Ohio, he worked in a garage fixing broken car parts. Now he was part of the Big Red One, the 1st Infantry Division, facing the skilled German Panzer Lehr Division on the eve of a major attack. He wasn't supposed to pull the trigger that morning. The target given to his gun team was a road crossing a few kilometers ahead, but it was hard to see. The map locations were unclear and messages were delayed. Then through the fog, someone spotted movement. Headlights cutting through the mist like knives. Trucks, tanks, half-tracks, a German armored group. 30 or more vehicles rolling slowly down a narrow country road toward the American side. Quincy Cade fire. The order cracked through the radio. Ray paused. The barrel wasn't aimed exactly right. He knew it. He was supposed to fix it. He was supposed to wait. But something in him, fear, gut feeling, maybe both, pulled the rope. The blast kicked up mud and smoke. The shells screamed into the darkness. Seconds passed, nothing, then an explosion. A single vehicle in the middle of the group lit up like fireworks. Flames climbed 20 feet into the air. A second explosion followed, then a third. Bullets cooked off in rattling bursts like popping corn. Gas tanks caught fire. The fog turned orange and black. Ray's breath caught in his throat. "Oh God," he whispered. "I hit the wrong target." But what he didn't know, what no one knew in that moment, was that the truck he had hit was carrying explosives. The perfect weak spot. His mistake had just turned into a miracle. Within minutes, more than a dozen German vehicles were burning. The road was blocked. The enemy thrown into confusion. American soldiers nearby, warned by the explosion, grabbed the chance to move forward. Ray sat frozen, staring at the smoke rising above the bushes. His face lit by the fire he had caused. He wasn't thinking about glory. He wasn't thinking about battle plans. He was thinking one thing: I should have waited. I think I just got someone killed. A quiet kid from Ohio with shaky hands. The man who pulled the trigger, Corporal Raymond Quincy Cade, was not supposed to be a hero. He was supposed to be an extra pair of hands, a new guy fresh out of basic training. He was born in a steel town along the Scioto River in southern Ohio. His father ran a repair shop. Ray spent most of his teenage years covered in engine grease, rebuilding engines and fixing car parts. He had no brothers. His mother died when he was 11. By the time he turned 18, the war had already taken thousands of boys from towns like his. Ray didn't wait to be drafted. He signed up in February of 1944, 5 months before the invasion of Normandy. After basic training, he was sent to Fort Sill in Oklahoma, where he trained as a field artillery crew member. He learned the math of death, cannon angles, shell types, powder bags. Then came England, then the ocean crossing, then the hedgerows. Now it was July, late July. Operation Cobra had just begun. The plan was simple: break through the German defensive lines south of St. Lo, and finally escape the deadly maze of Normandy's bocage country. Bocage, thick patches of trees and bushes, made tank fighting nearly impossible and gave defenders a deadly advantage. Every field was a possible trap. Every hedge hid a gun. Ray's unit was part of the 1st Infantry Division, nicknamed the Big Red One. Their job wasn't to charge machine guns. It was to stay back, figure out locations, and drop high explosive shells on enemy positions from 5 to 10 kilometers away. Cold mechanical, almost clean, but it was never clean. Ray's section, Battery Bravo, 32nd Field Artillery Battalion, had set up its gun line near a small farming village north of Cannae. Their gun, a 105mm howitzer, run by a 5-man crew. Captain James Harper led the battery. He was 34, quiet and all business, no stories, no smiles. Then there was Sergeant Luis Gonzalez, 2nd-generation Puerto Rican from Brooklyn. Quick with a joke, fast with a wrench. He had served in North Africa, then Sicily, then France. He was the glue that held the team together. Private Reggie Miller, 19, from Alabama, was the youngest aside from Ray. He told bad jokes, sang out of tune, and carried a photo of his dog, Lucky, in his helmet liner. Ray was the newest, the quietest, the one who always double-checked the angle numbers, the one who barely spoke. He hadn't fired a shot in combat until that morning. Every night he wrote in a little green notebook. Short entries, simple thoughts. Once he wrote, "I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared of messing up. Scared someone else dies because of me." Those words would come back to haunt him and to define him. Life on the gun line was brutal. The crew slept on tarps under the open sky. Rain soaked into everything. Meals were cold and came from cans. Artillerymen weren't seen as glamorous. They were workhorses, dirty, deafened, and forgotten. But when a shell landed where it needed to, when a group of tanks was stopped by an unseen blast, they remembered why they were here. In the days leading up to that important morning, intelligence had confirmed that German armored backup was on the move, specifically parts of the Panzer Lehr division. This was no ordinary enemy. Panzer Lehr was skilled, battle-hardened, well-equipped, and commanded by veterans of the Eastern Front. They were moving through the village roads at night to avoid airstrikes. American command feared they would slam into the side of the advancing infantry. Artillery would be the first and maybe the only line of defense. Ray had no false ideas. He had heard the horror stories. He had seen the bodies of men torn apart by metal pieces. He knew that one mistake on his part could mean dozens of dead soldiers on the front line. That's why when he pulled that rope early, when he fired that shell into the fog before checking the target, he was already certain he had failed, that he had done the very thing he feared most. But what he couldn't know was that his shot, his accidental shot, had hit the most vulnerable point in the entire enemy group. A truck full of explosives, a spark in a barrel of gunpowder. The results would spread far beyond the battlefield. And for Ray, time was already running out. One wrong angle, one silent shame. The days leading up to July 30th were restless. The gun crews at Battery Bravo had been firing almost non-stop since Operation Cobra launched on July 25th. Every sunrise brought new orders, new locations, new urgency. German defenses were tough, especially near St. Lo. American infantry had managed to break through in places, but progress was slow, frustrating, bloody. For artillerymen like Ray, the pressure was building. Most of the time, Ray didn't even see what he was hitting. That was the cruel truth of his job. He was expected to kill without ever seeing the enemy. Just numbers, distance, direction, angle, pull the rope, and trust the math. But numbers could lie or worse, be misread. On the evening of July 29th, the battery received locations for a German 88mm anti-aircraft gun hidden behind a hedge near the village of Lesnil-Erol. It had already knocked out 2 Shermans that morning and trapped a company of soldiers trying to cross a narrow field. Captain Harper yelled orders. We put that gun out of action before nightfall. No exceptions. Ray's crew sprang into motion. Gonzalez shouted, "Distance!" Reggie loaded the shell. Ray adjusted the crank with shaking fingers. He was on the breech. Final adjustments made. Everyone stepped back. All clear. Ray pulled the rope. The recoil shook the ground. The round screamed toward the target, then silence. 10 seconds, 20. The spotter's voice crackled on the radio. Impact landed 200 meters short. No effect on target. Captain Harper didn't scream. He didn't need to. He simply said, "Reset now." Ray's ears rang, but it wasn't from the blast. It was from the blood rushing through his head. He had misread the angle by Threedig. A simple error. A rookie mistake. They fired again. Second round landed closer. By the 4th shot, the 88 was silenced, but Ray's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Later that night, lying under his poncho beside the gun, Ray stared up at the stars and listened to the distant boom of someone else's artillery. The war didn't sleep. It just passed the turn. He opened his notebook and wrote, "I messed up. Someone could have died because I rushed the shot. Gonzalez says I'm being too hard on myself. Maybe, but hard isn't the same as wrong." The next morning, he didn't eat. He couldn't. Reggie offered him a can of peaches. Ray shook his head. Captain Harper called a brief meeting. Intelligence reports. Heavy German armor moving through the woods west of here. Panzer Lehr. Looks like they're moving for a counterattack. If they reach our lines, we lose Cobra, Gonzalez muttered under his breath. That's the last thing we need, Harper continued. Our role is simple. We see them, we stop them. No hesitation, no errors. Understood? Ray nodded, but his stomach twisted. That word error was still echoing in his mind. He cleaned the breach twice, rechecked the sights, ran through imaginary locations in his head. He couldn't afford another mistake. Not again. At 19, Ray had learned something most people don't face until much later in life. That fear isn't the thing that kills you. Doubt is the night before the fog caught fire. The sun dipped low on July 29th, casting long shadows across the Normandy fields. A dull orange glow clung to the bocage hedges like a warning light. In the distance, American thunderbolts roared overhead, shooting retreating German columns. But the skies above Battery Bravo were quiet. Too quiet. Ray Quincy Cade stood alone near the edge of the tree line, one hand resting on the cold steel of his howitzer, the other holding his helmet at his side. He stared into the thickening mist, beyond the field, trying to convince himself he could see movement. He couldn't, but something was coming. He could feel it. Back at the command tent, intelligence reports were piling up. Spotters confirmed that a German armored group was on the move. At least 30 vehicles, half-tracks, trucks, and several tanks from the Panzer Lehr division. They were trying to regroup behind enemy lines under the cover of darkness. If they succeeded, they could slam into the American left side by dawn. Captain Harper read the orders aloud with a voice like steel. "We are to stop the group. Cut the head off before it reaches the main road near Saint-Denis. Battle likely by 0400. Stand ready. Guns hot." No one said anything. Reggie Miller tried to lighten the mood. "Maybe they'll get lost. Take the scenic route back to Berlin." Gonzalez shot him a look. "No one's getting lost, Reg. Not tonight." Ray stayed silent. He couldn't laugh. Not now. After chow, lukewarm beans, and a slice of bread, Ray returned to the gun. He triple-checked the breech, clean sightline locked. He even adjusted the trail spades himself to steady the mount, something normally done in teams. Gonzalez noticed and walked over. "You trying to win an inspection or something?" Ray didn't look up, just wanted to be perfect. Gonzalez paused, then clapped him on the shoulder. "You'll be fine. You know why? Because you're the only guy in this crew who's more afraid of being wrong than being dead." Ray finally looked up. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No." Gonzalez grinned. "It's supposed to mean you're ready." That night, Ray didn't sleep. He lay in the damp grass, staring at the stars again, thinking about his father's hands, rough, cracked, always fixing things. He wondered if this war was something that could be fixed or if it was just something that had to burn itself out. He opened his notebook and wrote, "I've never fired a shot in war that I didn't wish I could. Take back, but tomorrow I'll fire one that I can't afford to." At 0345 hours, the mist rolled in heavy. The gun crew stood ready. Ray climbed into position, taking his place beside the breech. The air smelled like wet hay and oil. Captain Harper's voice came in low through the radio. "Group sighted. Grid Alpha 4, 20-plus vehicles. Distance 200 meters. Ready to fire on my command." Ray gripped the firing rope with both hands. This was it. No practice, no do-overs. The shot he was about to fire would be the first live round in open combat aimed at an enemy. He couldn't see, only guess. And all he could think was, "Please God, don't let me mess this one up." The shell that lit up hell. The fog was thicker than milk. Ray could barely see the tree line 100 yards ahead, let alone the road beyond it. Somewhere out there, hidden, behind the mist and darkness, a group of German armor was rolling straight toward the American line. 30 vehicles, possibly more. "Ready." Captain Harper's voice came through the radio again. "Target is moving west to east. Firing plan locked. Aim for the lead vehicle. Stop the group." Gonzalez confirmed the locations. Angle set, 200 meters. Fuse time. High explosive. Reggie pushed the shell into the chamber. Metal rang against metal. Ray took his position behind the breech, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. "Hold for confirmation," Harper ordered. "Spotter checking visual." The crew waited 10 seconds, 20. The silence was choking. Then movement. A faint flash of light. Headlamps maybe, or reflections off a windshield. It was hard to say. Then the voice came, crisp and immediate. "Fire." Ray didn't think. He pulled the rope. The howitzer roared. The shell screamed into the fog. The gun rocked on its supports. Reggie braced himself against the kickback. Gonzalez winced as the smoke slapped them in the face. Then silence again. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. Ray's stomach sank. He had fired too soon. He knew it. His hands trembled. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but before the words could come, the horizon lit up. One moment there was darkness. The next, a huge fireball erupted from the center of the group. A second later, another explosion, then another and another. Like dominoes, the entire German column went up in a chain of deafening blasts. Fuel tanks caught fire. Ammo trucks cooked off like firecrackers. Flames leapt 20 feet into the sky, turning the fog red and black. The earth shook beneath their boots. "Oh my God!" Reggie gasped. "What did we hit?" No one knew, but it was horrible. Through the mist, they could now hear it. Screams in German, metal clanging, engines sputtering, tracks grinding backward, vehicles backing up, crashing into each other. One tank, a Panther, tried to pull off the road, but its tracks hit a hole from the blast and it flipped sideways, trapping the rest of the group behind it. In less than 2 minutes, the road became a slaughterhouse. Captain Harper's voice came back, this time loud and shocked. "Spotter confirms main vehicle hit was a truck with explosives. Entire middle group is on fire. Group split. Enemy in full retreat." Ray stood frozen. Gonzalez turned to him, eyes wide. "Did you aim for the middle?" Ray shook his head. "No. I meant to hit the front." Gonzalez let out a short breath. "Well, heck, I think you just broke their back by accident." Radio chatter lit up. Other American batteries were now working together. Soldiers in the area were pushing forward to take advantage of the confusion. Infantry was moving up. Sherman tanks rolled through unopposed. Ray still hadn't moved. He just stared at the horizon where the fog now glowed with fire and smoke. His ears rang. His knees felt weak. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I fired too early." Captain Harper walked up behind them, eyes locked on the rising flames. "No," he said. "You fired when we needed it most." Ray didn't answer. Deep down, he still believed it had been a mistake, a wrong decision. But somehow it had worked. What no one knew, what Ray himself didn't know, was that the truck he hit had been carrying over 2,000 pounds of high-explosive weapons. The group had spaced itself too tightly, and the fire spread like lightning through the vehicles lined up behind it. It was a perfect shot, a perfect accident, and it had just saved hundreds of lives. But the war wasn't finished with Ray Quincy Cade. Not yet. One man, one gun, no time to think. The smoke hadn't even cleared when the payback came. At exactly 10:02 a.m., less than 6 hours after Ray's accidental shot destroyed the Panzer Group, the rough roar of diesel engines echoed from the east. Not all of the enemy had burned. 2 German Panther tanks and a half-track loaded with soldiers had gone around the road and circled back. Their mission was clear: destroy the American artillery crews that had turned their column into a graveyard. Gonzalez was the first to hear it, the low mechanical growl that turned blood cold. "Panthers," he muttered. "2 of them. They're coming straight for us." The team scrambled. Reggie dashed for cover. Captain Harper shouted locations into the radio, but it was too late. The tanks had the advantage. The first shell landed 20 meters from Battery Bravo's position. Kicking up a fountain of dirt and metal, the blast knocked Ray flat. Dirt filled his mouth. The second shell slammed into the command tent. The radio went silent. Captain Harper was down. Reggie was missing. Ray crawled to his knees, ears ringing. His right hand bled from a deep cut along his palm. He couldn't hear anything but a distant whistle, as if the whole world had been sucked into a vacuum. Then movement. Gonzalez was dragging Harper away from the wreckage, yelling something Ray couldn't make out. The howitzer was still standing, but no one was there. The crew was scattered, wounded, dazed. Ray looked at the gun, then looked at the approaching tanks. 2 steel monsters rolling over a nearby fence line less than 500 meters away. Their cannons swung toward the artillery battery. No one was in position. No one was loading. No one but him. He didn't think. He ran. blood dripping from his hand, boots slipping on churned-up mud. Ray sprinted to the howitzer. He yanked open the breech, jammed a shell in, fuse already set, and slammed it shut. No angle checks, no distance calculations, just raw gut feeling. He swung the barrel. He couldn't see clearly through the sights. His left eye was blurry with sweat and dust, but the tank was there, coming closer. The world narrowed to a single point. He pulled the rope. The blast was deafening. The kickback nearly threw him back, but the shell flew true. It struck the lead Panther just above the track where the turret met the body. The explosion blew off the top. Flames burst through the hatch like a volcano. Ray didn't get to see the second tank. The return fire came less than 10 seconds later. A high explosive round slammed into the ground just behind the gun. Metal pieces tore through the air. A jagged piece caught Ray in the lower back. Another lodged in his shoulder. He dropped. Gonzalez was there in seconds. No, he said, holding Ray against his chest, pressing a rag against the wound. You're all right. You're going to be fine. Ray's breath came in gasps, short and panicked. He blinked slowly. Blood pooled beneath him, soaking the dirt dark red. He tried to speak. Gonzalez leaned closer. Ray whispered, voice barely heard. Did I stop them? Gonzalez nodded, eyes filled with tears. You did, brother. You stopped them. Ray blinked again, his lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. Then he said something that broke Gonzalez completely. Tell my dad I didn't mess it up. His chest rose once more. Then nothing. Gonzalez held him long after the firing stopped. Later, backup arrived. The second Panther had been destroyed by air support minutes after Ray's shot. The half-track had been left behind. Battery Bravo survived because of one last shot. One final stand by a kid from Ohio who just wanted to get it right. The weight of silence and a wooden cross. It rained that night. Not the heavy, thundering kind of rain that washes everything clean. It was soft, constant. The kind of rain that gets into your bones and settles there. Battery Bravo was quiet. The howitzer stood still. Its barrel still burned from the morning's fire. Around it, sandbags were stained dark with blood and dirt. The smoke had cleared, but no one spoke. Ray's body lay beneath a canvas tarp, placed gently beside the hole where he had fallen. Gonzalez sat beside it, his head bowed, hands caked in dried blood, some of it Ray's, some of it his own. Captain Harper had survived, but barely. Metal pieces had torn through his leg. He'd refused to be taken away until Ray was covered. We don't leave him in the rain, he'd said through gritted teeth, not him. By nightfall, the battery had buried Ray in a shallow grave near the hedge, marking it with a simple wooden cross. On it, Gonzalez wrote CPL Raymond King, Ohio. He held the line. No speeches, no chaplain, just silence. Reggie, bandaged but alive, placed Ray's green notebook at the foot of the cross. He was always writing stuff, he said quietly. I figured he'd want it close. Later, when Gonzalez opened that notebook, he found the final entry written the night before. If I go tomorrow, I hope it's for something that matters. Not for glory, not for medals, just so someone else doesn't have to go instead. Gonzalez closed the book. He didn't say a word. News of Ray's death traveled quickly. The next day, a colonel from division headquarters visited the battery. He had heard about the rookie gunner who stopped a German armored group by accident and then saved his crew on purpose. He brought with him a form for after-death awards. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. Letters would be sent to the family. Captain Harper signed the paperwork with a shaking hand. He wasn't just lucky, he said. He was right when it counted. But awards couldn't fill the hole. The men who survived Ray's last day, who heard his voice, saw him bleed, watched him stand alone at that gun, would carry him with them through every step of the war. Through France, through Belgium, into Germany, and long after the shooting stopped, Gonzalez kept the notebook. Reggie remembered Ray's hometown. Captain Harper made sure Ray's name was included on the list of honored dead sent to the 1st Infantry Division Memorial Committee. Months later, when the war in Europe ended, Raymond Quincy Cade's name appeared on a simple bronze sign placed in the American cemetery near Colville-sur-Mer. It read CPL Raymond Quincy Cade, 1st Infantry Division, July 30th, 1944. He fired once and changed everything. To strangers walking past, he was just another name among thousands. But to the men who stood beside him, to those who watched him take that final shot, Ray wasn't a casualty. He was the reason they were still alive. And that more than any medal made him immortal, what one life can mean in 1,000 names. In the years that followed, few people outside Battery Bravo ever heard the full story. Raymond Quincy Cade didn't become a headline. He didn't end up in a war bond poster or a Hollywood newsreel. There were no songs written, no statues raised. In the official war record, his name appeared just once under the heading Killed in Action, July 30th, 1944. But among those who knew, those who lived because he stood his ground, his name was spoken with respect. There's something strange about the way a legacy works in war. The generals get remembered. The battles get names, but the turning points, the real ones, often come from moments no one planned, no one predicted. Moments like Ray's, not a planned move, not a brilliant plan, just a 19-year-old gunner who pulled the rope too soon. And because of that, a group exploded. A side was saved. A breakthrough succeeded. Hundreds of American soldiers lived to see another day. It wasn't courage the textbooks could teach. It wasn't strategy taught in an officer's school. It was gut feeling, fear, and an unbearable desire not to fail the men beside him. Ray's legacy isn't just that he fired the right shot. It's that he was willing to take the shot when no one else was ready. Even when he doubted himself. Even when he thought he'd gotten it wrong. There's a lesson in that. Not every hero walks into battle knowing what they're doing. Sometimes the people who change everything are the ones still asking if they belong there at all. Sometimes the greatest acts of bravery come not from confidence but from fear, held back just long enough to do something that matters. Ray didn't believe he was ready. He wasn't trained for glory. He was terrified of making a mistake. And yet in the one moment that counted, he rose above all of that. He didn't do it for medals. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because in that instant someone had to, and he chose to be that someone. That's what makes him unforgettable. And maybe that's what makes him one of the quiet, invisible threads that held the fabric of victory together. Stitch by stitch, name by name, one brave soul at a time. I keep thinking about Ray. Not just the moment he fired that shot, not the explosion or even the way he died. I think about the silence right before he pulled the rope. The kind of silence only someone terrified can hear. That moment of doubt when it would have been easier to wait, to flinch, to hope someone else would act first. But he didn't. He took the shot. He thought it was a mistake. And maybe that's the part that moves me the most, because how many of us live our lives waiting for certainty that never comes? How often do we tell ourselves we're not ready, not smart enough, not strong enough, not enough? Ray was just a kid from Ohio. No medals, no glory. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to do something right in a world that had gone so wrong. And in the middle of all the chaos, among the noise and fire and death, he gave something simple and extraordinary, the best of himself. Even when he was afraid it wasn't enough. There's a line from his notebook I haven't been able to forget. He wrote, "If I go tomorrow, I hope it's for something that matters." He didn't know that his name would be written in the margins of history. He didn't know that long after the war ended, long after the guns fell silent, someone would still be saying his name. But we are, because in a war that took millions, it's easy to forget one until you hear what he did, until you realize he saved lives. Not by being perfect, but by being willing. So if you take anything from Ray's story, let it be this. When the moment comes, and it will, take the shot. Even if your hands shake, even if your heart screams no, even if you don't feel ready, because that might be the very moment when history shifts and someone somewhere lives because you chose to act.